Welcome to Security Sessions, brought to you by Compyl. I'm your host, Dan Tagney, and today's the kickoff to Season 2. We have a great episode for you to watch. I have three great guests who are going to be discussing if 2024 will be the turning point for organizations to begin implementing best practices across the board when it comes to information security. We have with us Stash Brazuka, CEO and founder of Compyl, Will Kosofsky, who's the Director of Cybersecurity Market Strategy over at Stratascale, and our special guest today is Jeffrey Hancock, the CISO over at Access Point Technology, who seem to have an endless amount of knowledge to share with us on this topic. Also, stick around to the end as these guys share the events that they are not going to miss this year. Enjoy.
Thanks everyone for being here today. I'm excited. We have a great panel with us to talk about, I think, a really timely discussion. Jeff, I'd like to start with you. The question's kind of looming. Will this be the year where organizations and industries take a little more of a wider approach when it comes to cybersecurity? Given your experience and your network, are you noticing any areas of focus for when it comes to cybersecurity that are going to be really prominent as we kind of move further into 2024?
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I think to answer your question, what I've seen and heard, especially in the last 6 months, is really around boards slowing down, companies slowing down, not financially, not running the business, but when it comes to security, instead of just throwing money at something and saying, you guys go deal with it, the CISO's in the closet, like the CIO was in the closet 25 years ago dealing with the email server. Now the CIO is an executive in an organization is running a lot of stuff. The CISOs now are growing out of that. They're coming out of the closet, so to speak, of managing security in a quiet place, and they're becoming more visible on boards, especially primarily the SEC ruling, the SEC rules, and their response to SolarWinds has kind of gotten people moving a little bit. But the boards I've talked to, the business leaders I've talked to, they're starting to slow down and say, wait a second, now this is turning a tide. Things are becoming more serious because of some of these potential legal issues, which I think will end in nothing, quite honestly. But I think that's making CISOs think, that's making CIOs think, that's making boards and CEOs go, okay, how are we making sure we're measured when it comes to security? Our investments are clearer. We're actually getting a bang for the buck. And it's moving our company forward. It's not getting in the way. It's the same old adage. We've always had these questions in security as CISOs, but it's becoming more prominent now because, again, the SEC rulings kind of put everybody on notice. The ransomware noise that's been going on for the last few years has made people say, okay, well, honestly, defensive cybersecurity operations isn't working. We need to be more proactive, and people are starting to think about what that means. But to do that, you've got to slow down and change your perspective. So I think we'll see a slowdown in the busyness of cybersecurity for CISOs and for boards, and a much more analysis from boards, which means, in my opinion, CISOs are going to need to slow down and look at the business side of what's going on. How am I communicating to the business? How do I translate my security operations to business value, business challenges? Right? The same old adage, same old conversation we had for 15 years, but it just needs to rely on CISOs who are mature and have experience. That's I can't say it any other way. So
yeah, I'm seeing something similar like that, kind of along the same line. I like the idea of the claw, like it used to be a mushroom, just sit back there and like, hey, this is your problem, and throw the stuff over the fence, and the CISO grows. But yeah, we're encountering a lot of businesses now where we've always talked about the security, at least those of us in leadership positions who kind of understand the business, that, hey, if you're going to implement this technology, there's business process around it. There's risk appetite. There's, how are you going to, what's the process going to be? How are you going to manage this? There's organizational change management, right? Which a lot of times, and in fact, I had, somebody talking today in one of our meetings about, hey, we're building in organizational change management into this project because that you need your organization to adopt what's going to happen. You need to really think about what you're doing. You're not just throwing money at this technology. And the client at the time even said, normally I'd tell you to get that shit out of here, but no, I know this is our problem. Like, I know our problem is, like, you can't just put the tech in place and be like, oh, that's going to solve everything. And I love the SEC reference. I like the fact that you can't just, it's not a checkbox anymore. You actually have to, now how you say it and what you say is is all completely up to you. But at the end of the day, they all know that investors and shareholders are going to look at it and go, what does this mean? Do I really, how much do I want to, not me, the individual guy who's going to buy 3 or 4 shares, but, especially somebody who's looking to acquire or take a major stake in it, they're going to probably scrutinize things a little bit more and care about what's actually written in there. So if you're going to be all fluffy and nondescript, then that's going to hurt your value.
Yeah, I agree. I think real quick to add on to that, using the SEC and the SolarWinds example, the responses at SolarWinds, and I know the CISO, they're a great guy. The response that he was given to give to the SEC, was very, very tactical, in my opinion. It was very, oh yeah, we're doing this. Oh yeah, we're doing that. And I get it, right? The problem we've got in the community is people look at cybersecurity as one of the 12 or 14 tactical disciplines, and they report on, we've information access is great. We're all doing good. But the board doesn't care. Customers don't care. What customers care about is, are you aligning what your security posture is to the business? And one of the main ways of doing it is like the NIST security framework. Because again, it's not technical. It's very business oriented. It's how it was written, how it's also being edited right now. But using that, I think, is going to come to the forefront of how boards communicate to shareholders, and how CISOs need to understand, what am I doing and how it aligns strategically to the business. So I think it's a good thing.
Stats will talk all day about NIST.
And I was literally going to talk about the NIST, the version 2.0 that's supposed to come out next month. But the new section on governance, right? It's all about responsibilities in the organization, and that you can't just brush them off anymore, and that someone actually is going to be responsible for it. At the end of the day, someone's going to be holding a bag. So it's just going directly back to your.
Let me be facetious for a minute. How long did it take for NIST to start working on 2.0 and release it versus CMMC coming up with an idea and still not doing anything?
Well, CMMC is actually relaxed. It's actually relaxed its requirements, right? I mean, now they're a lot softer than they were when they first came out. But NIST is going pretty. I mean, the last update was 2018. The next update, 5 years, still a long time. But in the frameworks world, it's pretty quick.
That's faster than ISO 27001.
Well, that's
agreed.
2013, and then
2022.
22.
So as a side note regarding NIST, the CSF. So I've been involved in that since 2012 when it was developed. And then all the workshops that in 2013 that took 14 months, went to every one of those. I'm part of the team that's edited the first couple of versions, and literally, I live in Virginia, so the NIST offices are 40 miles from my house.
Wow.
So we're going through all the feedback that we've gotten from everybody, and going through the governance piece, trying to tweak it and change it, modify it. The goal is to have it done by before RSA, so folks will be able to talk about it at RSA to some degree. It's on track. I mean, we're working on it. I was looking at it last night, one of the latest sections that we're trying to edit down and make easy. It's a lot of data. I mean, it's good. It's needed for sure. One of the interesting things about that is doing the crosswalk to CIS 18. So again, because of my experience in the industry, I'm an advisor to CIS, Center for Internet Security, and I've been working with the critical controls since they were called the Consensus Audit Guidelines, actually, way back in like 2008. But there's a team trying to map those controls to create that crosswalk. So you've got CIS 18 as an operational set of standards for CISOs, and if you got the CSF as the business justification process for security operations, those two things I think will continue to align really well if CISOs are able to focus on the value proposition of each, and then how they present the data from a metric standpoint, from an operational standpoint, all that thing. So
we get a lot of traction in Spiderweb from the CIS into, like, if somebody's coming in tactically, looking at things that way, and then we're when we ask a few questions about how the business is being secured and how things we can push them into NIST, and then kind of open eyes a lot of times.
Oh yeah, absolutely makes it practical and understandable.
That's if the CISO knows how to bridge that gap and actually speak to the board about.
Or you just be like, hey, just introduce. We'll just take we'll go take the fodder, the bullet fire for you.
Well, that's one of the things, Stas, that I was curious about. 2023, for one thing, it wasn't short of was big names and headlines and breaches. We had 23andMe with 6.9 million users affected, MGM Resorts, and we could just keep naming them. And we're certainly going to see more in 2024, right? But I'm curious, to Jeff's point, CISOs are required now, it seems, to be more aligned with being a business enablement kind of tool. How are you thinking, Stas, in 24 are going to be some effective ways CISOs are going to be able to report consistently to board members so businesses can make better decisions when they're kind of approaching maybe new opportunities?
Yeah, I think the first thing that they're going to need to do is they're going to need to define their SLAs and KPIs, which is easier said than done. Once those are established, they need to be moving off of Excel and not relying on people and their memories and filling in Excel sheets and reporting on those KPI SLAs. All of these things the industry has been working towards for quite a while, but it's still not there. I mean, I was literally on a call earlier today where they were showing me their operational readiness checks every week, and they're all manual. It's a manual Excel sheet that people update and send out. But in terms, I mean, the SEC ruling is definitely a step in the right direction. I think ultimately this is where we're going anyways. Like with the FCC, they require that all publicly traded organizations have to report their positions and their and any incidents or faults that they might find while trading. It's the same thing that happened on the security side as well. I mean, the writing's on the wall. It's just how long it's going to take for that to happen. But what Jeff is on now, like with the NIST revisions and the CIS version 18, if there is a standard set of frameworks and regulations that everyone can agree to and work towards, then I think that will solve a lot of the issues that we'll see today.
I like the KPI and metric side because that's something that CISOs can leverage especially for if you're in a mature organization, because what you have to do is you have to look at the business goals. The business is going to have some 3 or 5 year plan that's got some big lofty, not arbitrary, but a big lofty goal they want to achieve in their industry. And then if you can tie back, okay, well, we're going to do these 3 things that are going to, it's going to impact this, it's going to produce this, and that's going to help drive the business to achieve goals A, B, and C, and work backwards from that, then that's a way to, 1, secure your funding. And 2, if you go and ask for, hey, what are those KPIs and metrics for the business, and they don't have them, then you've got bigger problems because, I mean, yeah, we're all security professionals, but if your business doesn't know what it's supposed to be doing or how it's measured, then that's a conversation you should have also.
But it's also for their compensation as well, right? I mean, if you can stick to those metrics and also like COA, then it's a win-win for everybody, right? It's just, again, it's easier said than done to actually develop those metrics.
Yeah, for those of us in consulting, like that's we what is it we need to do? Okay, we know exactly how. That's how we all get paid. So
absolutely,
yeah. I think that's a good point in helping try to determine what you just said. Well, like going to the business owners saying, here's your 3-year plan or your 12-month plan even. Here's where I understand where you want to go as a CISO. Here's some things that'll help enable you to get there. That's one like programmatic, here's what's coming. But today, to keep the lights on, Mr. CEO, I need to get everybody on the same multi-factor. I need to get identity access management tools in place so we know who's logging in.
Not have 4 different EDR tools, whatever.
Exactly. And I need to hire 4 people to be able to maintain and monitor all of this for our 10,000 employees, right? Yep. And there's a cost of, to your point, Stas, like what the metric of today's operation versus here's what's coming because the business wants to grow in that direction. And here's what we have to do to help them. So there's kind of 2 different tracks there.
Yeah.
But I think that's important distinction so people don't lose sight of how IAM can impact your business today and in the future as you grow and do M&A, right? You buy somebody else, you buy something else, whatever the case may be. So
yeah,
it definitely causes a challenge.
Yeah, M&A strategy, you're zero. Like if you don't have a zero trust strategy, like you're just like kind of trying to do, you're just going to spend more money on it, right? Like have those things in place so that, yeah, sure, we can't convert everything now. It's going to take time. And that's what most things, not just zero trust, right? There's a journey involved here. Yeah. Let's go ahead and map that journey out. And let's tie it to the business goals.
For sure. Jeff, I'm curious from your perspective. In the last couple of years, there's just been this major insurgence of automation in the security field. I'm curious, not necessarily the specific tools that you've used or liked or haven't liked, but the areas where you have seen bringing automation in to be very effective, and maybe areas that you've seen it maybe not so effective.
Sure. So, gosh, my reference point comes from, so in the last 20 years, I've built or run 36 SOCs. Things from the Pentagon SOC to large Intel SOC to everything from the couple of $1 million and 4 people to 110 people and $200 million a year to run SOC size. So when the automation conversation comes in, man, we've been talking about that for decades, it seems like, right? There's a few federal agencies I know firsthand who are eons ahead of where industry is when it comes to automation and security and IT, and they're not sharing. And for their rightly so, for their reasons, and I get it. But to your point, what I've seen, especially in the last 5, 6, 7 years, there's been a lot of use of, oh yes, we're AI enabled, and this was like 5, 6, 8 years ago. And you're not AI enabled. You don't understand what it means to be AI enabled from a product standpoint. What you are is actually machine learning. You've developed some programs and processes. Again, so from a SOC guy's perspective, as a CISO, being pitched, hey, this is a great EDR tool, and it's our new AI feature, and I can't tell how many times I've taken those apart and realized that no, it's not really AI. But to get specifically to your question, I've seen people who try to sell or go in a direction of AI for identity access management and fail miserably. I think there's some challenges there. I think they can be overcome, but a lot more operational focus needs to be put in what the standards and metrics are for identity access management and how you want to automate that to some degree. On the flip side of that, so I think that's kind of an outlier and kind of like people are trying, but they're not there yet. On the other side of that, man, I've automated threat feeds, response to threat intel. So, cyber intelligence is the big umbrella, and you've got, specific threats underneath that, and how in your process of, your cyber intelligence process, and how that works. Automating that process, yeah, that's really something that speeds up from a SOC guy's perspective. And that's something that really gets it in the gear, right? You're able to cut out the noise as much as possible, which is still a challenge and will be, but you're able to narrow down what you need to respond to, what you don't need to respond to, how you need to protect your systems. It works well. And I think I've seen actual maturity in that. I still don't call it AI. I just call it more mature machine learning. I think on the AI front, I think we're still 10 years out from actually really seeing artificial intelligence helping run security.
Yeah, I've been in places like exactly you said, machine learning decades ago, right? That's part of just threat hunting and validation and just reducing the noise. And I've seen it now where we do use, I mean, it's technically AI to kind of reduce, the direction now is to remove like as much of that tier 1, like level, that first call, that first response, that first investigation, all of that stuff, that initial triage down. Some are, I know some are doing it successfully. I've seen it pretty successful. There are some good tools out there. But yeah, the idea of doing it with something as complicated as identity and access management is still a long ways off. And I think if we think about AI the same way we think about it's just automation, it's just smarter automation, right? And those folks who aren't sharing, I know why, because I was there again decades ago when we were automating stuff with SIM and certain rules and things would happen, and but you had to code it all. Like there was no tool for it. Like it was all writing custom code specifically for that instance, this thing to happen. So it's a lot of work. So even if they are sharing it, it's probably not even applicable to everybody, right? It's all very, very specific. But yeah, I think most of the stuff that we're seeing now is all based on that initial triage and just kind of, it goes back to kind of what we said earlier about the CISO or the organization being more thoughtful. And that also means being efficient and cost effective. And then that means making sure that the few people that I have, and few could mean 2 for some and 200 for others, but you want them working on the most important, impactful things. You want their brain that you're paying for to be using as much as it is, and not doing sort of the mundane tasks if you can automate that out. And so that's kind of where we are today, I think.
I think that makes a lot of sense, because I think, Jeff, to your point, like identity access management could be a real challenge, and you would have to get really into the organization to understand their exact processes and how, one layer or one set of employees is using certain, maybe tools versus another set. But, Stas, something we generally stumble on is even just the evidence gathering piece, not the less complex side of it, but still a ton of effort and resources that it takes, and the struggle to even just get the evidence gathering to be accurate. I'm curious your perspective on the automation, the good and the bad.
I mean, the biggest thing that I keep coming across is that all these companies still have they have a lot of products. They have a lot of products running in the organization. There's a lot of redundancies. Nothing's interconnected. And if you have a small team, they're not going to have the resources to manage all these different platforms. So they're all going to be shelf. I mean, the vast majority of them are going to be shelfware at that point. The evidence collection piece of this is very difficult for organizations as well, because a lot of the times they're not keeping up with what they're supposed to be doing in the first place. So when they do get audited for whatever reason, the name of the game is bury the auditor, right? So they'll bury the auditor with as much information as they have on random stuff. The auditors can't make any sense of what's actually going on and what's being presented to them, either because they're not technical, they're not face or whatever it is. So it's a lot. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors going on in the security space still, and even from the audit side as well. I think where AI can be very useful for this type of stuff is to be able to go through a lot of evidence collection and being able to make heads or tails out of it. If it even looks like the right document or what's in the document, just being able to summarize that huge collection of data for whoever's looking at it, I think that would be very useful. That still requires training, and that's more machine learning at this point than AI still, but it's not, I don't see that being done at the moment. Again, there's not a lot of platforms that connect all this data together. So until that happens, I think we're still going to see a lot of, like, Jeff, I fully appreciate that, SOC has moved on leaps and bounds from where it was. But it's, there's still other aspects that are just not connected to it, right? Like identity access management is not connected to it. EDRs, depending on what they are.
Yep.
That's where like a single pane of glass is really what I think is still in the industry. And then if you were to put actual AI over top of it, because it's been trained long enough, I think we'll see some real results. But I think we're still away from that.
Yeah, the SOC, as you said, the SOCs evolve, right? It's not what it used to be. SIM's not what it used to be because of all the stuff that's coming out. Oh, and now we have data lakes. So, I say now like that's new, but you know what I mean? Like we're just gonna put it all in the data lake and find it.
But that's true, right? I mean, like even like something like Docker, right? Like you're like, oh, like great, I like managed to secure like all these app services, and like we're going really specific here, but like we managed to secure all these app services, and we have all the right controls, and we're totally secure. And then someone's like, we should try using Docker because Docker provides us like blah blah blah, and then you're like, all right, now we have to rebuild this entire new SDLC process around this, and like this type of stuff requires a lot of work and a lot of knowledge to be able to put in place. Like, and technology is just moving so fast that it's just really difficult, especially if you're resource constrained, which pretty much everyone is.
And to your point about like, as a CISO, the challenge has always been in building SOCs has always been reducing the amount of tools in your SOC, right? Yeah. So I can go. I've over the years, certainly I've worked with a bunch of CISOs and CIOs and their SOCs, trying to help reduce all the products, all the tool sets, and streamline operations.
Yeah,
man, I don't remember the first time I heard single pane of glass. It had to have been like 2009, 2010.
Yeah,
we're gonna get everything
years.
Yeah, get everything out of single pane of glass, and you're gonna love it. Like,
back when Splunk was just a log tool.
Right. Yeah, 2010. I had done maybe 15 SOCs at that point in my time. And I was like, yeah, you're never gonna get to single pane of glass. There's no chance. Just with
now it's even worse.
Yeah, exactly. And Stas, you nailed it, right? I think there's the integration piece and not having enough staff. What is this tool from Palo Alto not work with this firewall tool over here that comes from Rapid7 that comes, and what about Checkpoint? And now I've got Sentinel, and what am I doing with? And it's just too much.
That's that's I mean, that's how I make our money. It's like, hey, look, Mr. Client, you need the single, like you need the data. You
Yep.
need to make decisions.
Yep.
Just send us all that crap. We deal with all the tool, like, you know, and I'm not pitching, but like that's why services exist. That's why SOC, you know, service providers, managed services companies, tool, you know, because even like even if you try to put all that stuff in yourself and try to build out, you know, whatever special like if you most MSSPs have some type of proprietary IP that is not useful to a single SOC, right? If it's not something that like, oh, if I have my own business, I'm gonna code this thing because they're not dealing with multiple SOCs, but dealing with all those multiple SOCs and all that multiple technology and being able to take all that intelligence and use all that together. You know, that's why the service provider industry even exists.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think that's where the need for, and it's coming, it's being developed, is a common cyber operations framework. That's more how CISOs should run a SOC. What do you everybody knows your priorities are, but how are you integrating these pieces? Why these pieces, not those pieces? How do you prioritize it? So essentially, at the end of the day, you develop a cyber operation engine that runs, and it's clean and clear. And
we're talking more granular, like beyond MITRE, so to speak.
MITRE is a component of it. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So being able to gather the data in, but then how are you going to run your SOC where you're taking in cloud information and insider threat programs and MITRE data side. And how do you do that, right? And it's we're working on something now to try to help define what an enterprise, and that's not the right word, but an enterprise security operations framework looks like for CISOs to help understand where do I plug things in and how do I prioritize what's most important. Do I need a forensics team? No, not really. It's important, but you don't need it right now. You can always outsource it, but you definitely need cyber intelligence.
Yeah, it's sort of it's a way to take, I look at it as a risk assessment, but you know, where you're looking at, okay, I've got X amount of capability in-house or budget that I can spend. What things do I need to do? But also I need to have these other things available to me when the time is right. And, you know, depending on the complexity, because then you're like, okay, what is HR doing? And do we have an insider risk program, or are we using, where are we in the cloud? Like all of those different things sort of feed into that decision-making process for sure. So
exactly,
see the value there.
But you also have to take into account, right? If you're going to do something in-house, like what happens if that person leaves? Is there a key man risk? Is there a key man risk there? Like
documentation, man. Everybody does documentation and asset management. Two things businesses do great.
Yeah. Documentation and asset management. The two things that every business does so well.
Will, I thought you said your resolution was no more lying.
I don't make resolutions. I am what I am.
Before I let the three of you go, and Will, I'm going to start with you. I want to know what is the event or conference or dinner that you're looking most forward to this year? Industry. Will,
industry-wise,
what's one you're not going to miss?
This year, let's see. For me, Gartner Security Summit is always my favorite. I get more from that than I do RSA or Black Hat or anything. That's just kind of it's kind of me, I think. Well, I don't think that's in general. So that's probably the one. Also, I'll probably try and speak at that one this year again. So I would say that that's probably the one I'm targeting.
Where's that one?
So I think it bounces between National Harbor and DC.
Yep.
Yeah, it's where sometimes it was in Florida one year but I think it's still at National Harbor. Which is also convenient for me. I don't have to get on a plane. So
Jeff, how about yourself?
Undetermined at this point. I think there's I'm reluctant to go to RSA. Just because I've been there so many times. It's just the same spiel, and I get it. But yeah, it just doesn't, there's nothing there. I'm much more I think now in my career, I'm much more looking for the smaller events where I can sit down with a bunch of CISOs and have a conversation and camaraderie and just what's going on, how can I help, or how can you help me, or whatever the case may be.
Sure.
And there's a lot of smaller ones. So I've actually got someone developing this year's 2024 list of, the top 15 big events in the US for cyber, and then the top 30 smaller mid-size events, regional events. I think I'm going to try and focus on more of those this year, just because there's more people who have needs, right? And the conversations aren't, hey, buy this tool. Hey, do this new thing. Hey, let's do a Shark Tank. Yeah.
Right.
Have
Done
you read
that.
my white paper?
I was
Right,
gonna say,
exactly.
I'm gonna kind of steal you because I'm in the process of building like our CISO advisory board thing, and that's something like I
Wow.
don't know if we'll have it done this year, but those are the best when you can get like for us in the industry, like get your clients together, you know, the CISOs that you work with the closest and get their feedback, and you know, for me being able to talk about, oh, here's what we're seeing in the market. What do you guys see in the market? Here's what we're
Exactly.
build in the future. What do you think about that? Does that work? Like that to me is the most fun.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Sorry, Stas, cut you off.
No,
there.
no, it's all good. It's all good.
How about yourself, Stas? What are you looking forward
I
to?
only have one on the cards right now, and that's the only one that I'm going to, and it's in February. And it's well, a friend of mine hosts it, who's a CISO now. It's called CISO Masterminds. It's in Florida this year. It's a smaller event, but everyone's a CISO or former CISO. But yeah, I mean that's I've like just like with like Jeff and Will, like well, maybe not so much Will, but like I'm not going to RSA, and like I'm not going to go to Black Hat. Like there's just I've done it, I did it, I don't need to do it again. So I'm taking a page out of Jeff's book and just going to smaller events.
Yeah,
I can get salespeople to buy me liquor here. I don't need to go to
Right.
Las
I can
Vegas.
buy myself liquor. It's
Yeah,
fine.
it's like
Yeah.
Where are you located, Will?
I'm just north of I'm in central Pennsylvania, so I'm about 2 hours from where you are. Probably.
Okay. Yeah. I'm near Leesburg, so yeah.
Oh yeah, we can get together and have a drink anytime you want.
Sounds good. Well, I really do appreciate the three of yours time. This is great, great conversation, and we'll certainly have to have another one in the future. Thank you for being here.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Nice to
everybody.
meet you guys.
Take care.
Appreciate it.
Have a nice weekend.